So, hello everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, according to where you actually are following us. My name is Armando Graziano. Welcome to this webinar on TRAINALTER, which is identifying the competencies required for seafarers working on ships using alternative fuels and energy systems. Despite I've read this name so many times, I still can't remember it very well, but today we are going to focus a bit on this study that was published by EMSA. As I mentioned, my name is Armando Graziano. I'm a project officer for the EMSA Academy, and I've been in EMSA since 2017. Today I have a co-host, which is Melanie. Please, Melanie, introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you, Armando, and welcome to our viewers. My name is Melanie Saramagu. I'm an officer on the Human Element team in the Visits and Inspections unit. I joined EMSA in 2024, so a little over a year. With us today, we have two of my colleagues, Jaime and Jaime, and they will share some insights to the study. But before we start, Jaime, would you like to introduce yourself, and then Jaime, you can follow?
Yes, thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Armando. Everybody will think that we have all the same names in our group, but it's not true. Really, my name is Jaime Veiga. I'm an activity coordinator for the Human Element team. We deal with the matters related with STCW, MLC, and in fact, everything that relates with humans in terms of shipping and seafarers. I started in EMSA in January 2005, so over more than 20 years, almost 20 years and a half.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Armando. My name is Jaime Gonzalez. I am a senior officer in the Human Elements sector, also in the Visa and Inspection team, and I joined EMSA in 2007, almost 18 years ago.
Okay. So thank you very much for this introduction. Now we gave a bit of an overview of where you actually work in EMSA, and obviously you have been responsible for this study. For the webinar today, and this is for our audience as well, we'll organize it in three main parts. In the first part, we'll discuss a bit about the background of the study, so how it came into essence and why, the reasons. On the second part, we will discuss a bit more about the findings of the study, so what was the outcome of the study and what were the findings. And then in the third part, the last one, we will discuss a bit more about what should come next after the study, so how the study could trigger potential development in the world. Now, one important thing to say to the audience is at the moment you don't have the camera and the microphone. Nevertheless, since this webinar is live, you have the possibility of interacting with us through the chat. We will, at the end of the webinar, which will last around 40-45 minutes, we will have time to look into your questions, and Jaime and Jaime will reply to them according to the time that we have. More or less, we will have around 20 minutes of question and answer session. So it's 45 minutes plus 20 minutes. Man, do you think we will start?
Absolutely. Let's begin by setting the stage. To start, Jaime, could you explain why it was decided to conduct the TRAINALTER study?
Yes, well, I have to say yes, because we conducted. So I'm here exactly for that purpose as well. As we all know, so and because we deal with human element training of seafarers, but we are in a phase that shows a shift towards decarbonization. And what happens is that there is difficulties, or there is not at all defined training programs, defined competences for the training of seafarers that are going to work on board ships using alternative fuels in terms of the main propulsion. You need to reduce the emissions, and so combining the needs to reduce emissions, the shift towards the decarbonization, the fact that you need to have people on board who are to work in a safety way. So we decided to conduct this study with the objective, as Armando referred, to identify specific competencies. And then from the competencies come other aspects of training programs, etc., that we'll talk a bit later on, I guess. So, but that was the objective. Shift towards decarbonization, no competencies defined, at least worldwide, that can be implemented. And so we decided, okay, let's go and work. And this was a study that took 1 year, basically.
And basically, from what you've been saying, it seems like the study actually identified an existing gap currently.
Yes.
Like there is a quite a big shift towards decarbonization of the industry itself, or the maritime domain. And then you actually realize that, yes, ships little by little are becoming more using alternative fuels for this push towards decarbonization, and you actually found that there is a gap. There is a gap of the people that have to work with this fuel.
Yes, exactly. And that was the reason why we decided to commission this study.
Okay, and you thank you for the overview. It really emphasizes the importance of this work. Now, before we get into details, can you explain, Jaime, maybe how the process actually started?
Yeah, actually, the study does not start from the scratch. Actually, what the study looked at as the starting point is the state-of-the-art review about the existing studies which are already in place. Of course, the regulations, and then guidance which are already being developed by the different stakeholders, so that by compiling all the information, we made this literature review, so that at least we put together everything which was already done in the aspect of the different fuels. On top of that, we just carry out interviews to those who are dealing with those specific fuels, not only on board, but also in the onshore industry, since they are also taking quite a key role in providing the experience that they may have in the particular case, for instance, for the ammonia, which is, let's say, used onshore, but to bring this knowledge into the onboard. That's why the study just gathered and compiled all that information, and on top of that, we carry out workshop with subject matter experts, and then just to bring also the experience and the knowledge from those experts in the different fields of the different aspects. All together, so it serves as a starting point just to identify the potential competencies, which is just also presented in the part A of the study. And we should not forget that there is also an element that is not only about identifying the competency, but as we will see later, the part B is also on the training aspect for those competencies.
Now, okay, it is clear that the key of the study, on the one hand, you have the alternative fuels that have been used on board, that are currently being used on board, and the competencies that are missing, or that should be the competencies that people should be working on with these fuels, with these alternative fuels, should have. But we know that there is quite a variety of alternative fuels out there that can be used in the maritime domain as a mean of propulsion. Did the TRAINALTER focus on some of them or all of them, specific ones?
We, as you said, there are a series of them around, and but we had to choose which ones would be the focus of the study. And based on this, we chose the 7 with the people working with us, which went from the LNG, which is in fact one that people have more experience in the industry, so even the seafarers is more used, so the characteristics, the risks of operation, so are more known. So we started with the LNG, the biofuels, the methanol, the fuel cells, hybrid electric battery systems as well, ammonia, and hydrogen. So these were the focus of the study. So these 7. There are more, but then it would be very complex. And at the end of the day, we are in the beginning of the process. So, and you don't have all these properly implemented. So the study is a starting point for everything. And being a starting point, we started with these alternative fuels and talking with the different experts, talking with the industry. So these are the ones that now appear to be, let's say, the ones for the near future and medium term as well.
Let's say the most likely to be found on board in the near future.
Yes, not some more than others, but these were the ones that were considered important during this particular initial phase of the shift towards decarbonization.
It's interesting that you mentioned LNG because as a fact, and we will look into it a bit later with the statistics, that LNG is one of the most used fuel on board at the moment. That's why there is more experience with that. But is there any other fuel that is currently quite used on board?
Yeah, as you said, LNG is the most common nowadays, but electrical battery system, this is another alternative, which is mainly used nowadays in the shorter local traffic. I think this is the, say, we can compare, the thing is the second one after the LNG, the most commonly used, in particular when it refers to, say, to shorter local traffic.
And it is a fact that, as we are mentioning, that alternative fuels are one of the key, let's say, means to achieve decarbonization in the industry. No, so there is a big push towards decarbonization, a big push toward using alternative fuels. And did you find, on top of everything else, any risks associated with the use of these fuels? Because on the one hand, it is obviously pushing in one direction for decarbonization, then this is one of the means to achieve it, one of the main means to achieve it. But on the other hand, we very little we talk about the risk associated with these alternative fuels. Did the study actually tackle this?
Yes, so it was important to tackle that because each of the alternative fuels, as you mentioned, have own risks specific to each of them. So in the report, you have listed the characteristics of the different fuels together with the risks for each of them. Those change from problems, for instance, hydrogen explosion, flammability, cryogenic aspects. Ammonia has aspects related with the toxicity, the ventilation. Also, for fuel cells, you may have fuel contamination. So, and some limitations in the operation, which may also be a risk. So, it would take a lot of time to refer to all risks for all fuels, but they are referred in the report. And why the risks are important? Because what was the objective of the study? Competencies, then training frameworks, etc. at the end. And when you define or identify, in fact, the competencies that are needed to be incorporated, if you don't consider the risks, something is missing. And it is interesting in this aspect, even talking with some people in the industry, in particular marine engineers, who are following this development, this shift towards decarbonization, that refer that it's not often that people talk about risks. People talk about risks, but not as often as they talk about the advantages of the use of alternative fuels. So, including the reply to your question, we had, together with the people working with us on this study, to look at the risks, identify the risks. And now they were considered in terms of our proposal. So this is not, it's part of the process that is ongoing in terms of defining competencies in training programs for seafarers. But the seafarers need to know the characteristics of the different alternative fuels and then the risks that they pose. So is also something that is detailed in the report, and more important than that, considered in this proposal that the report presents in terms of competences needed.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. Understanding those risks really highlights the importance of proper training. Now turning to the core of the study, the competence. Jaime, can you clarify which group of seafarers needs to acquire these competences?
Yeah, I think that since not every seafarer are dealing with all the alternative fuels, so the specific the study what it has identified is the different functions, so that it's depending on the role and the duties that they may have on board. So the study has identified competencies which they apply to all, but also it has been discriminated by all the different functions through, let's say, ranging from navigational, marine engineering, maintenance and repair, controlling electrical and electronic systems, so that in the end, depending on the role that they may have on board, there is a link between the potentially the competencies to the role and also the duties that they are having on board. As an example, for instance, in terms of emergency awareness, so that means that it's applicable to everyone who may be on board. And then, but I think when it comes to the engine itself, so it may be just competency for those who are operating ships by using all these different type of alternative fuel. That's why it's tailoring the competencies to the functions that they may carry out on.
With so many different fuels, was there one fuel type that stood out that was difficult to create a competencies for because of the lack of know-how, or it raises safety concerns? Did you have fuels that you had issues with?
All of them, because everything
Okay.
is new. But okay, now not going to more detail, because everything
But
is new.
LNG is easier.
Is easier. You have already enough material for that. But aside the LNG, which was also looked upon, because we are in learning mode. So you always learn more and try to get more out of what is already known. But one issue that exists, and then this has also some effects, not only in relation of the study, but internationally at IMO, to adopt amendments to the STW Convention, for instance, if or when that is the case, that create that issue is the lack of safety requirements, that can be adopted at international level. Because, you can do whatever study, you can work, but at the end of the day, you need to keep in mind that this is an international industry. Seafarers are coming from around the world, different countries, different education and training systems. So what was the main issue is, and that is lacking still, is safety requirements. We talked with people from the industry. Our colleagues were also working on this, talked with people from the industry. There were these workshops that were organized. I did not participate in any of them, but the experts were participating on that. But the lack of adopted training standards worldwide is the problem. And that is the main difficulty for the future. So the industry is already probably at the stage that they are the ones who can define these safety requirements. And I refer not only the shipping industry, but for instance, offshore, they may be also more advanced in this respect. And once we have acceptable safety requirements adopted, so then also facilitates the training institutions to develop courses, and at the end of the day, the regulators to regulate. But we, during the study, were looking at competencies with experts, what should be here for this fuel, etc. But we don't know yet, and that was lacking, what safety requirements you'll have at the end of the day. So that was the main limitation in this respect.
Mhm.
But anyhow, what is there, we are quite confident that can provide a good input for the discussion and future work that is being done.
It looks to me that the study went a bit ahead of time, like while there is still a lot of talks to be held between regulators, ship owners, industry in general. The study was quite proactive in nature in order to already, by finding the competencies needed by the seafarers, at the same time it highlighted that there is already safety requirements that still have to be adopted, that agreed upon, and so on and so forth. So it could be actually a trigger for future development.
Exactly. Also because the industry has experience, for instance, transporting some of these fuels as cargo,
Right.
but not for the main propulsion.
Exactly.
So all this has to be considered, and that is, we looked at this, and this is something that needs to be looked upon in more detail.
And the fact of the industry shifting towards the use of alternative fuels is also a demonstration of how the industry is evolving itself. So on top of the use of alternative fuels, which is already quite of a highlight of how the industry is evolving, did you find any other areas where competencies are needed for this evolving, let's say, modernizing industry?
Actually, this is something that when the study was developed, it was also taken into account. Say, on top of the real, say, competence for the particular fuels, the study also includes a particular set of cybersecurity and cyber risk management related competence. Why? Because this is also important due to the fact, even in particular, in the particular case of this fuel, that where they are really depending on digital and automatized systems. So the awareness about any not only prevention but also the consequences of potential cyber incident or cyber security incident. So these consequences, so in terms of raising awareness for those seafarers, that's why it was also the focus on that particular set on top of the technical competencies and then also the operational competence for the fuel. So that's also in the study there is a particular package of cybersecurity and cyber risk management competencies for the seafarers.
It is important to mention it because on top of all the competencies that all the seafarers have and they have had in the last years that are quite well codified in any case, it is a fact that we are evolving, the industry is evolving, and there is new competency needed. So it is it is quite interesting that on top, while you were studying, let's say, and searching for competence for alternative fuels, you actually stepped upon also the issue of cybersecurity. So very, very, very interesting. And now, with your work, you have identified these competencies. Now, let's go a bit into the training program itself. We know that, as a matter of fact, the number of ships using alternative fuels is not as big as ships using, let's say, traditional fuels. Do you see any complication that would make complicated, let's say, difficult to develop these training programs? What is the obstacles, let's say, that you can find?
I can go back to what I said before. because, okay, everything starts a bit from there. What is the main problem? You have mainly three actors here, maybe more, but you have the training providers, you have the regulators, and you have the industry, being the shipping industry, offshore, etc. But now we are more focusing on the shipping industry. So what is the problem that was found talking with some training providers and also regulators, particular. Okay, the industry is a different story. The training providers are basically waiting for regulators. They are waiting for regulations, and I referred before this issue about the safety standards, safety requirements for the operation in a safe way of the alternative fuels for this purpose. So they are a bit waiting to know what regulations will be in place. On the other hand, you have the regulators that are waiting for training courses as well to adjust to that, and because they have, at the end of the day, if they lead to certification, etc., to have the courses approved. Otherwise, something will be missing. And then you have the industry, which in fact is stepping in, but needs maybe to go a bit further, those who have that expertise, to define these safety requirements. So all these three actors need to be together. But from the side, and your question is, what limit the development of the courses? So those who are to design and develop the courses are the training providers. And that is basically what limits. Nevertheless, worldwide, there are already training institutions which were not waiting for our report or for the work that we are also participating at IMO to start designing and offering courses. But indeed, to have everything fixed in a proper way, it is necessary that particular safety requirements are identified, approved, adopted, and that the training courses consider them if they have not yet considered, so to have then the regulators stepping in. But we are all working together at the end of the day. But this is the problem.
So regarding the courses, do you see all the fuels effectively integrated into one course, or will each fuel have some type of dedicated module? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think the fact that not all seafarers will be working with all the different type of fuel, to have a modular approach, I think is the wiser way to proceed, so that instead of a full package of training for all the different fuel types, so it's much wiser just to really focus on each one separately, so that depending on the ship that the seafarer may be working on and also operating, so the training could be specifically tailored for those particular ship, rather than setting a package for all the a training package for all the different fuels. So that's the modular approach, I think, is the best way to proceed in terms of providing training for those particular fuels.
And now, Jaime, you mentioned the stakeholders, maritime authorities, training providers, shipping companies. How can these stakeholders actually work together to ensure proper training?
Working together. Okay, but what they need is what is being done anyway. So it's not, don't take it that nothing was done. We are at the beginning. For instance, at IMO level, we are now developing interim guidelines. We have team here participating on that. We had the last HCW subcommittee in February, We have now ongoing correspondence group, and then we'll discuss further during the next session of HTW. So the development of interim guidelines is the result. So you have there the three stakeholders participating as well. So it's already, and this is necessary. But as I mentioned, interim guidelines is interim guidelines. It does not,
Right.
it's not supposed to be forever.
Mhm.
So it's for the time being. But is, I would say, if we talk about internationally, is the first step towards achieving something. And during this period, what we can expect, in addition to reach what is intended with interim guidelines, is that all that we have been talking here about the safety requirements, competences, the possible at a later stage content of training courses, people involved with it started thinking about it. So, this is of course the ideal forum. So it's international, we have everybody. And as I emphasize, we will not have European standards on this because at the end of the day, the ships are operating worldwide with, as I mentioned before, seafarers who are coming from around the world.
Mhm.
So, and to achieve common, accepted, worldwide standard, so everybody has to work together now through IMO. I know that some training institutions or in some countries there are already programs that are being developed or already developed. But what is important is that we have an international common accepted standard for the training of people in this respect. And what has been done so far is putting together all working at international level. And all the work like ours, or the work that has been done in different parts of Europe, United States, Asia, is also serves as input for that.
Right, right.
So I think it's new. There are not many vessels. There are not many seafarers with experience necessary on this. So to achieve and to comply with the deadlines that industry has, so or everybody work together, or then it may miss the deadlines.
Right.
No, it is definitely very, very interesting. And the more we talk about it, the more the fact that it is such a new topic and
Right.
it comes back to our discussion that is so new that, yeah, everything is new. The discussion at the international level, the number of studies talking about this is very limited, or very few countries have actually tackled this. So it's such at an early stage that on the one hand, you still have room for getting everyone together and actually creating the standard, but possibly the road to get there may be still a bit long at the moment. From the study, I understand that, and we have discussed that already before, that the number of ships actually using alternative fuels, as I mentioned before, it's still limited. Do you think that this specific aspect has an impact on the development of training and the development of this particular competencies for seafarers?
This is the fact that you mentioned the number of ships. Actually, in the 2025 EMSA report published by EMSA in February, even if there is an increasing trend of the number of ships which are currently using these new alternative fuels, there is still, as you said, a room for let's say, bringing those technologies on board. As an example, in terms of actually ships using methanol, there are 33 already using this alternative fuel, and 29 on order. So that gives you an idea that there are not so many. And when it comes to the limitation, it is true, because the fact that there are not so many ships in place, it may affect also to acquire the experience about all those fuels. So, and that's why it's a kind of cycle that because of the lack of ships, you may not get the experience, for instance, because it's the main also, one of the main things is to get proper trainers or instructors, so people with experience who can bring that experience for the seafarers who will be operating those ships. That's why even if this trend is increasing, we're still in a, you said, in a not only in learning but also in terms of investing in ships using those technologies. I think it's a combination of the ships available and also the possibility to find people with experience to provide that such training.
Yeah, of course, because on top of having very few ships, then you need people working on the ships to acquire the experience of working with these people. Then you have to wait for these people wanting to be going ashore and start to be trainers. So it is really an early stage. Like there is a lack also of, let's say, critical mass of humans, actually, of seafarers working on these technologies to be able to have the right amount of trainers. But on the fact that you mentioned trainers, did the study also take into consideration how to train the trainers?
Absolutely, because as you mentioned, it is important to have people who are capable from a technical point of view to train seafarers. And as you said, not many ships around, not many experience around. And then where are the trainers coming from? And maybe some of them may not have yet the necessary experience, but they have to start training even. So the study consider that, and the report presents also the competences, some training framework in terms of training of for training the trainers. That is part of the study. So it's our contribution there. I know that we are not the only ones, because there are other institutions or even part of the industry which has already developed some type of train the trainers, but ours, like everything else, so what we have is not to be on stone, can be changed, but is our contribution to that, and also a call of attention that we are considering competences, specific competences indeed, for the seafarers again, but we also cannot forget the specific competences needed for those who are to be the trainers. So training the trainers was also part of the study, and is an interesting part in the report for those interested to look and use it also as needed.
Yes, it's quite reassuring that to hear that instructor development was part of this or built into this process. Now, part A of the study focuses on competences. Part B, however, as Jaime mentioned, focused on the method of achieving those competencies. What kind of tools, methods do you think are going to be needed to provide this type of specific training to seafarers?
Yeah, actually, what the study even concludes is that the current existing methods, for instance, for demonstrating the competence are still valid even for providing the training for this competence. So this is the classrooms online, the use of simulators, the onboard training. So these are elements which can also be used for under the training or for this alternative fuel. But we have to also take the new technologies on board, which are currently developing. We cannot ignore that more and more the use of extended reality, virtual reality. So these are elements which can be also embedded and can also be used as to complement the ways that the maritime education and training institution are also providing this training on those particular fields. And also we cannot ignore the use that it's more and more common nowadays is the use of artificial intelligence, also just to incorporate those elements of artificial intelligence to the training part. So that's why it's a mix of current or traditional methods for demonstrating the competence, but also that's embedding the new developed technologies, as I said, as virtual reality, which is even now one of the element that also the training providers are incorporating, so that it adds an added value also to the existing ways of, or the traditional ways for let's say for providing that training.
Yeah, it's impressive to see the advancement in technology and maritime education and training. Let's start wrapping it up. Jaime, this question is for you. If you had to summarize one of the achievements of the TRAINALTER study, what would it be?
I would say,
or a key message for our audience.
I would say a comprehensive training framework is now in place. Out of the report, you can look at that and say so. By the way, the report is anyone can download it from the EMSA website, and then those who are more interested in certain areas can look at that. It's not like a book that you read a romance, but if you are interested in train the trainers, or if you are interested in ammonia, hydrogen, or any other alternative fuels, so you can look there. But a comprehensive training framework is what exists there. In addition, so you have the competencies, you have lesson plans. So it's something that, and that's why we did it, so that can be used by those who are interested, who are involved, as a support document. It's not the only one. There are possibly, I'm sure, others, but this one went into a lot of detail for the competences of different fuels, alternative fuels, looking at this framework lesson plans from 9 to 11, timetables, outlines, all that. And I have not seen, it's not because it's ours, it's because I have not seen, maybe someone is developing such a comprehensive report on the identification of the specific competences, etc. The name that Armando was saying, that is the title of the study. But yes, comprehensive training framework is maybe the best word.
Okay. And thank you for mentioning where the study can be found. We forgot actually to say that before. Everyone can have it. We can go on the EMSA website, www.emsa.europa.eu. You find it under publication, and you can download it from there. Now, the last question before closing up, and actually for all the audience, if you have any question, you can start posting them. We will look into that after the next question. What are the next steps after the study? How will you be involved, or how the study can serve the community, let's say?
I think that the key word is the cooperation among all stakeholders. Of course, the study produce not something which is complementary to what is already in place, but we have to continue this cooperation not only among the engine manufacturers, ship owners, regulators, and also maritime education and training institution, among others. So that's why continue working together, so that we just try to find the elements that seafarers may need, just to when they are working on board, so that in the end they operate the ship in a safe way, because this is also as you mentioned before, to keep safety. from our work, or also EMSA, as part of the role of assisting the Commission, we are also part of the correspondent group at the IMO, so that just working on the development of the interim guideline, but also just to compile all the different proposals for competency goal for all the different fuels. And of course, we may also contribute by organizing workshops on those particular elements, on a particular fuel or in general. As you mentioned, even if the report was not, I say, is in the EMSA website, there was an info paper also presented for the Maritime Safety Committee, where the report also can be, let's say, made available to the, let's say, the IMO members, so that in the end, all the initiative, but as I said, the key word in here is cooperation among all the stakeholders dealing with these matters.
Quote one of my favorite movies, "This is just the beginning."
This webinar is the beginning.
This webinar is the beginning.
Well, it is already published. People know anyway, but then they are planning.
That's very good. So thank you very much to both of you and to Melanie to have participated to this webinar. I think that we have a bit of time to look into the question. We have a few, so I would like to go into that. I will start reading them, and then whoever of you wants to jump in, just feel free. There is a person that has two questions. Actually, I'll start with one. What practices currently applied on land-based industries do you think can be transferred to help developing seafarer trainings?
Yes, you can.
Actually, this is one of the, as I mentioned before, I think when we went for the state-of-the-art review, this is something. This is what kind of experience we also may bring into the ships. Also, some of the competencies which were identified, if, for instance, ammonia is widely used as a cargo on board. So that means that there is certain experience for using this type of fuel onshore, and then bringing that experience on board. This is something which is important, so that we may not ignore what is already on the onshore industry, so that we can complement also, and also to bring not only the knowledge but also the experience into when, let's say, installing this type of engines or this type of machines or on board. So that's why it is also important to learn also and to what is at the shore base. Yeah.
And continuing with the same person that asked two questions, what mechanisms for knowledge exchange and collaboration, for example, online platform, can be established to facilitate this opportunity to transfer practices between organizations operating on land and at sea? So where do you see that this bridge can happen between land-based industries and the maritime domain?
Well, from establishing a platform where everybody can discuss, IMO, so the different the correspondence group as well, but during the HTW meetings, and I mentioned possible workshops. I think if you organize workshops and invite people who have experience from the shore-based industry or from offshore as well, because people from the shipping industry, training providers, regulators, is obviously also a good possibility. You need this to organize and to find the means to organize, which may not be so easy. Or just have some specific, and then this is an invitation for not only for the EMSA Academy, but can be for anyone who is interested on this to organize online events. I think organizations that are participating at IMO, that are ship owners, so can in fact organize even online. So nowadays it's so easy to organize an online meeting to exchange information. That is a possibility to do it. And of course, this is important because, as we mentioned, is something new. So ideas are needed how we can share outside the normal forum of IMO,
Yes.
etc., to go a bit further. So the workshops, but today I think webinars, online meetings on some specific, maybe some specific fuels, so when on ammonia, hydrogen, fuel cells, whatever. So those who are interested should use that to exchange. And this is what occurs to me now.
Thank you very much for the answer. We have another of our guests from the audience that's asked, the IMO SCCW convention already specify competencies for the use of alternative gaseous fuels. Is the proposal to build on this existing framework, modifying the competencies and adding fuels as needed?
I don't want to go too fast. So at this stage, we are at IMO working on the interim guidelines and waiting for what we discussed here. So it's possible, but maybe there is also another way. What would be ideal is to incorporate in the STC of the convention eventually. I think that would be the easiest way. Although you can have also the code of alternative fuels or something like that may lead to some certification of seafarers. So I think at this stage things are maybe still a bit open. But
Yeah.
the easiest way, but I'm talking personally,
Yeah, of course.
because it's to have one instrument that deals with it. It's easier. Also for us that go around to verify how the different countries implement, to check here at EU level how the countries implement, to establish training programs, etc. It's easy to have one instrument. But other things can be open. So I think maybe in 1 year time we may have better idea of how to go.
And there is another question. Ultimately, it is up to the flag state to implement the training, with reference, for example, to the STCW, the ISM, and other convention, while it is the company that must pay for it, probably in the use of. How will the EMSA report affect the progress of this safety issue? Going back probably to the safety standards that you were mentioning.
Well, the EMSA report is a contribution to the discussion, to the debate about who is going to pay. Sometimes it's the seafarers, sometimes if they want to upgrade themselves and they are not connected with the shipping company. Sometimes maybe also the shipping companies, some shipping companies have their own training centers or training providers or even in-house training. So, but yes, when you have new training courses, someone has to pay. That's for sure.
This is what happens also nowadays with other type of training.
Exactly, even here. So we have training and someone pays. Or I pay myself if I want, if it is outside or something. So yes, I don't know if that replies the question, but it is my attempt to.
I also wanted to mention that also the EMSA Academy has developed training on alternative fuels, which actually started this week, and it's on ammonia. It's obviously not for seafarers, but if any of the authorities that are interested, I would always suggest to look at our course catalog, because we are starting to develop a series of courses on alternative fuels from now on.
is also not the contribution of the study, although it is linked with the EMSA's contribution, not only to conduct and to publish this study, but also to offer. So we are all working together.
Development,
Exactly.
yeah.
We have a question from Belgium. What is your opinion on adding a fuel-specific training to be included into the advanced firefighting training and competency building on spill containment procedure? How, in your opinion, an online course can transfer the competencies to seafarers on how to fight a fire from methanol or methanol spill?
Online?
Yeah. It's two questions.
Yeah. The last part about online, I'm a bit skeptical for this purpose.
For this specific purpose.
For this specific purpose. The first one, I don't personally don't have a clear response to that, because as I mentioned, I feel that we are still in the beginning. To see, you need first to look at the different competencies, because there are competencies that may be even horizontal and maybe better to be included in a specific training course than in another. So we are still in the phase of developing what are interim guidelines. But from the study, we do not suggest anything of this kind at this stage. And as it is so much in the beginning, it's possible. But I prefer to wait to have more elements before having my own view on that. I think we are still navigating, well, very close to the port in this respect, and we need to have a better idea. Although both possibilities, I think, can be used. But if we talk about online, about firefighting, then I think that one I would be on reservation.
Of course. Well, let's not forget also that the study focused on the mapping the competencies, so it doesn't go into the detail on what is the best way to achieve it.
Not yet.
So
No.
we also need to frame this webinar and the study for the audience in a way that so the questions are reflected. Is it the intention to propose building up on the existing IGF code training framework by bonifying the competencies and adding fuels as needed?
Is what even in this discussion in the correspondence group, to see which competence can be used for different fuel types. For instance, the similarities of some fuels in terms of basic competencies, and then to complement them with a specific one for that particular fuel, rather than starting something from the scratch, just to, for instance, to use the IGF code as a reference, and then what can be included, and then as part of the particularities, for instance, the ammonia or the methanol as a fuel. That's why, as part, for instance, and this is an example that how we are working is just comparing what is, for instance, from the IGF, and then adding the different particularities for the specific fuel types, so that we may follow the same pattern as we have nowadays, so we don't have to go for something completely different. What can be incorporated, and even what can be also obsolete in terms of maybe there were some obsolete competencies which are not anymore applicable to the current let's say way of operating ships. That's why it's just making a comparison what can be used, and then what can be also incorporated in terms of new competencies for the particularity of the fuel types.
Thank you, Jaime. And there is another couple of questions. Is the training under this project directed only towards those who will handle these fuels, or will it also cover other seafarers, for example, cooks or type of seafarers on board?
For the time being, is for those who are to handle these fuels. that was the intention of this specific study. The rest, as I said, we are at the beginning. We'll see.
We are at the beginning.
But
of this thing.
for the time being, the competences that were identified are for those who are to handle directly now.
I think that the question was directed in the sense of what happens in case of an emergency or anything like that. I think it's more related to that, but obviously this will come
Yes.
when we will have also the safety standards. So
Yes,
it's also
exactly.
connected to that.
Exactly.
Is there adequate industry knowledge and understanding for liquid hydrogen related competencies? Have you came across this into the study or?
There is, but not so much, I would say, the shipping industry, although for hydrogen, there are already ships, vessels operating. We did not discuss that much but, during the study, but I think it's a good question we can keep to try to, as part of this process that we initiate, to take it into consideration. And anyhow, I take already this opportunity that anyone who is attending this webinar or others who may not attend and may watch later, because if this is going to be recorded for others to see, that we welcome any type of suggestions after you read the report, because what we said was just
Of course.
the basis of the report, to come with suggestions. Of course, we will consider what we learned, what we have in the report for the work that we are doing, particularly now at this current stage in the IMO correspondence group. But, and in the future, and also in interaction with the shipping industry, training providers, but any feedback that we can get and suggestions, because as I said, this is not to remain on stone.
Mhm.
It's a contribution, and it's, in my view, a big contribution because it's a big report and very detailed one. But particularly from the side of those who have experience outside the shipping industry, working with these alternative fuels, everything is very welcome to reach us in EMSA. I think it's important.
Yeah, I think it's important also to mention that. This is a very precise question. I don't know if this is the forum. I just will read it anyway. What courses and who should have them on board when you have high voltage charging from the shore side? This, I don't know if that is the scope of.
I think we are not yet there because we have not yet discussed that detail.
Right.
Because that comes for the marine engineers who are on board, but have to deal with these alternative fuels. So we propose, as I mentioned before in the course, and it was one of the questions you asked, this training framework. But we have not yet specifically identified.
Mhm.
Based on this, the course A should be this, the course B should be that, should include, should be linked with what people already know or were already trained, for instance, high voltage.
Mm.
So it's something, it is very interesting, but I think it's for the next phase with us or someone else picking up this and discussing who should attend this course A, B, C, and as also I mentioned, seafarers who are working on board, imagine if it's ammonia, don't need necessarily to study or to go through courses that they need to learn hydrogen, pressure, etc.
Right.
So we still need to go for the next step to identify which courses should be attended by whom and what link can be with training already required. Say already should be A, B, or C.
Yeah, of course.
At this stage, is not yet. We are not yet there.
Understood. And the last question for today, The big issue is that the IGF code is only about LNG and only mentions other low flashpoint fuels. The cause problem, as the knowledge among companies is still rather low. How can EMSA contribute to getting clear rules about alternative fuels?
I can start, maybe Jaime can say, how can we contribute participating in the different international forums? So we go maritime safety committees, in this case, for the STCW, the HTW, and organizing workshops, events. You are organizing as EMSA Academy, okay, as EMSA, the training courses in different type of alternative fuels. But this is how we can, because we don't work alone, so we work under the EC umbrella, and even if we were working alone, so we are not imposing any rules, but we participate, we contribute. How? International Forum, IMO, offering courses in that in relation to alternative fuels. So it's also something that we can do and discuss. There was the question how we can connect the different parties online.
Yes.
Workshops
Yeah.
is also one way to gather information that then can be used later when we are discussing with the regulators and we are thinking about regulations. I don't know if you want to add
Yeah, I
something.
think, as I mentioned before, we have to continue the cooperation among all of those involved, so that in the end we all say work in the same or with the same objective. So that I think that Jaime said, we have to continue working together and bringing the knowledge and also the experience from all those who are already working with those fuel types. I think the key word I say is continue the cooperation and bringing all together to let's say and to work with the same objective.
In the meantime, we had other two questions. I think that we managed to.
It's good. It's much better than waiting. Oh, no questions. Oh my God, this is not interesting.
In which direction do you think that the COPs for the alternative fuels for seafarer will develop in the future? Will there be specific COPs for all the different fuels, or one with the specific module mentioned? I think we replied a bit about the
A
different
bit,
modules.
I'm referred that one. Maybe you can add that the queue, please.
Yeah, I think that's what currently what we are doing is just to identify what is already in place, what can be also integrated as part of the specific specification of all the particularities of these new fuels and integrating all together. And as I said, without creating a much more complex system, but I think it's just to take into account all the different elements which are existing with the new ones and making merging everything together in the most efficient way, so that we are not let's say reinventing everything, but integrating all the different elements which are already in place.
There is one thing that we need to highlight, so that some competences are horizontal.
Yeah.
So they are
Yeah, of
horizontal
course.
and they cross all or most of the alternative fuels, and not referring only to cybersecurity that was mentioned. That was also is something interesting that is there, but I'm talking about more the other technical aspects of the fuels and operation. So they are horizontal.
I'll give you an example. For instance, when it talks about emergency, I think the basic one applies to even to all the fuel types. So it means that these competencies are can be replicated for all the different, but it's because it's basic awareness about emergency procedures, so they can be applicable to all of them. So
Understood. We just have another couple of comments. I think that we have concluded with the questions. I wanted to thank you once again, Melanie, Jaime, and Jaime, for being with us here today in the studio. I want to thank all of you that have been following us today, and a big thank to our technical staff that have helped us to deliver this webinar today. Stay tuned. We will have future webinars being broadcasted by EMSA in the future. Stay tuned on our LinkedIn and Instagram pages and our website. And again, if you want to take a look at the study on TRAINALTER, go on the EMSA webpage, find the publication tab, and you will find the study there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, and see you soon.